Welcome to Mind Myself Conversations with E. I'm Esther, or you can call me E, and I'm the founder and visionary for Mind Myself. Today we have another fantastic guest with us talking about the microbiome and soil health. And it's going to be a great conversation. But before we dive in, welcome Sarah Griffiths.
Hi, Esther. Thanks for having me on.
So glad to have you here. And tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Sure. I am, my company is called the Animal Synergist, and I started many years ago, longer than I'd like to admit, as a wildlife management keeper in a conservation center. I then went into kind of the holistic animal space from there, and then ended up going to school and becoming a classical homeopath. So I did a 4-year human clinic, and then I also mentored under a wonderful animal homeopath called, her name is Julianne Lee, and she owns the Adored Beast Apothecary now, which used to be a veterinary hospital. And so I worked and practiced under her in that clinic for 10 years. So my education is a little bit backwards from what you would learn in a book. I learned in the field, and then I came to books and research after. And I have a lot of clinical and field experience. So it's kind of made my brain work in a little bit of a different way. It sent me on this very strange trajectory where I am now, which is I do have my own practice, and I consult with pet owners and horse owners around the world. And I have an exciting new project, farm project that's coming up this year.
I love it. You have such a varied and deep experience with both animals and humans, which is so great. I know mine myself typically focuses on the human side of things, but the animal side can really inform us too. And I know that your experience and your sensitivity, because you're highly sensitive and intuitive being as well.
Mhm.
And I think that that's going to just lend such juice to this conversation.
Awesome.
Yay. So, in talking about the gut microbiome and soil health, let's backtrack a little bit because I know that there's some history to this. Let's talk about how the Industrial Revolution has impacted our health. And let's start there and carry on.
Yes. So because I started in wildlife management, I was in the realm of species specific husbandry for whatever wild animal we were working with. So I worked with primates, big cats, wolves, um, herbivores, all different
Raptors.
raptors, everything.
Yeah.
And the focus and the scientific practice with those species is to feed them what they evolved to eat. And that was just kind of part of it. That just was the scientific way, the responsible way to take care of our wild animals that we had in captivity. So when I went into the veterinary space, and I got my own dog as well, and I realized, I took my dog to the vet for his checkups, and um, looked at the foods that were available, and so that kind of segues into the Industrial Revolution conversation, where everything was in a box, in a bag, in a very clinical, sterilized space. And at one point, I really, in my heart, wanted to learn how to feed my dog, like a species specific or even a home cooked diet or something like that. And I asked my vet about it, and he was just thought that it was the worst idea and that I was going to hurt my dog. And I was so shocked because I had already been doing this with these other animals. So, um, and because I was virtually a teenager, end of my teens, I still was in that stage where a little bit rebellious, a little bit questioning things, and really open to learning. So I I kind of just kept going down this rabbit hole. And what I've learned is why the animals are so important to me is because they have taught us, or they've taught me anyway, and lots of other people, I'm sure, about why it is that we need to honor our ancestry and how that can kind of make or break us when it comes to our health and on a physical, mental, spiritual, all levels. So, and animals have such a spiritual component. Our relationships with them are nonverbal and all of that. So we I get a lot of downloads from them in behavior feedback, health feedback, to tell me what it is that they actually need. And a lot of it is based on those basic species specific needs. And as the Industrial Revolution has kind of, um, we're way down the road on that. And we're now into the fourth industrial revolution of AI and everything else, which is a whole other layer. Um, we have really, I think a lot of our modern day health problems are mirrored in our domestic animals. And what I have really come down to after all this clinical um, practice and looking at all these sick animals is that the consensus for me is that there has been a generational sterilization process that has happened, and everyone's talking about the gut microbiome and the importance of that in our health and how much it is part of our immune system. And the only way we can keep that healthy is how we eat, how we take care of ourselves, keeping our stress down, all of these things, meeting our own basic needs. And even on a human level, it is a species specific way that we have to take care of ourselves, like having a community and eating specific diets and all of these types of things. Um, so what they've really done for me is kind of, narrowed it down so that I can contribute the most to us and them with, more streamlined, because I do dogs, cats, horses, humans. There's so many different avenues, but there is now a theme to my goal of how I want to care for all of these animals and go more into teaching on how we can help each other and our animals with really outside the box ways of regenerating our GI health, our microbiome, all of these pieces that are missing, they're actually missing. So we've done that through antibiotics, chemicals, all these detergents, and the way that we house animals, house ourselves, don't go out into nature enough. Our food is grown in very sterilized soil, and agriculture industry is very chemicalized. So we have all of these factors that are, sort of driving our microbiome into down, and it is affecting our everybody's health.
Got it. And this is direct follow from the Industrial Revolution and scientificizing, to make up a word, all the processes and getting things from boxes in plastic wrappers and highly processed food. Absolutely. So, can you talk a little bit more about generational microbiome trauma and the epigenetic fallout? And what does that actually mean? Those are big words, but what does that
Yeah. Recently I've been embarking on a partnership with a laboratory in the United States called Animal Biome, and they do
mean?
microbiome testing. That's basically all they do. And so I'm doing a trial with them to kind of flush out why horses are having such problems with their gut health. It's a massive, massive problem with horses, and they have such a large GI system, so it's a life-threatening issue for them. So what I've learned through we've almost tested 200 horses now, and this was a big aha for me, not just for the horses, but for all species, was that horses are very much generationally sterilized from uh, being kept in like basically boxes, with no environmental input, no access to living soil, no access to living plants, no access to other horses, which they're social. So that all of these things affect their microbiome status. So when we have a mare or mama horse that has a very sterilized microbiome, they can't actually pass that information down to their babies because they don't have it. And that's what's happening with humans. It's happening with dogs. It's happening with cats. We have a lot of breed specific in dogs, like golden retrievers and Labradors. They are very highly sterilized breeds because they've been overbred and overdrugged, over antibiotic, over everything. So they are born with a deficit there. And this is happening for humans too. So, and we have tons of research on this now, and it's really it's become clear that that is a I think, we have all of these supplements and all of these holistic measures and all of these different tools that we can have um, at our hands to, make our lives better, try to improve our health, based on how we're feeling. But I think I know we've talked about this before, but I think the holistic industry has become almost as bad as the pharmaceutical industry in the way that it is a vastly huge market. And there's always these ads that there's a magic pill and there's these quick fixes, and if this is happening, then this is going to fix your problem. And it really doesn't work like that. So if you don't have your foundations, then you could take every supplement on the earth and it would never do the job that you want it to do. So
Right, absolutely. And let's talk. So, could you define what is the gut microbiome? I know we hear that everywhere, but you've talked about why it's impaired, but what is it?
yeah, so it is it's like another universe, basically. So, in very simple terms, it's the microbes that live in your GI system, particularly in your hind gut, your colon. Um, that's where the largest surface area is, where these guys can live. And we can have all different types of diversity in there. We can have different levels of different types of species. So your microbiome is almost as unique to you as a fingerprint, which is pretty interesting. So we do have like our generational passing down from our parents, but it is primarily environmentally developed. So if we're young and we have a lot of antibiotic input, if we have a lot of steroids and lots of immune suppression, lots of suppression of the microbes in the body.
Or toxins, even.
Exactly,
We're
like
surrounded by.
laundry detergent and toxic candles and cleaners and all of these types of things. With every input like that, it is another layer. So, there's lots of research now that kids that grow up on farms and with pets and things like that, their microbiomes are much more rich, much more diverse because they're outside, they're going into more likely to go into natural spaces, forests, trees, things like that. So it's not just the dog or the farm that's causing that. It's the environment in which you get out into when you have a dog or when you have a horse or whatever. So that is, you know, I always think of my microbiome as like a bank. It's like my health bank. So you can make deposits and you can make withdrawals. So every time you take a round of antibiotics, you're making a withdrawal because you're dumbing it down, and you can potentially wipe out certain species in your gut.
Right.
It's much harder to return a species to your gut than it is to protect it. And so you can actually do testing, microbiome testing now. It's very easy to do. You can get a um, mailed kit, and you can do it yourself now, which is really cool. And you can see how much diversity, what kinds of species are in there, and then you can kind of read about what these species thrive on. There are different types of microbes that like different types of fiber, different types of food, different types of environments, higher pH, lower pH, higher oxygen, lower oxygen. So depending on the environment in your gut, like for a person who has, say, IBS, they're going to have less oxygen, more inflammation, all of these types of things,
Mhm.
probably way less diversity than they should have. Whereas someone who maybe doesn't have IBS, doesn't have any GI issues, which is kind of uncommon now to never have them. That is always like, even we all just went through the holidays, we eat weird stuff and then we don't feel the best. And that is because we've actually changed our microbiome status.
Amazing.
So it's not just bugs in your gut. They are actually living on the surface area of your GI system. And the most fascinating part about them is that they are interfacing with your cells, with your DNA. So they live directly on top of your cells of your GI system. So they are talking back and forth. And your GI system is one of your major ways that you take in the outside world through food, through air, like through your lungs. So you have microbiome in your lungs. So it is interfacing your the outside world with your inside world so that you can keep dynamically adapting to the environment that you're in. So that's
Right.
what's so cool about it. That's what's so important about having a healthy gut.
Got it. And GI is just gastrointestinal tract, and you're talking about your gut when you're talking about that. Absolutely. Now, I know people are focusing a lot about soil and the depletion of soil these days. Can
Yeah.
you talk about the importance of soil and how that impacts our food and our food choices and what we need to do about that?
Yeah, that's a huge topic. Partly, we have a major problem with our food sources now. A lot of us don't really know where our food comes from, and unfortunately we have access to everything all the time.
Yeah, but why does that matter where our food comes from?
Yeah, so when it's kind of the same thing as when you go out into the environment and you take a walk at the beach or you go into the forest or you go up a mountain, you're integrating yourself with that environment, and it's your local environment, it's where you live. It actually integrates your immune system. So when we don't eat seasonally and we don't eat locally, this is all, getting kind of popular to eat locally and seasonally and organic and all of these things. One of the reasons that that's so beneficial is because if it's growing in your area and it is able to thrive in that area, it's going to have a positive impact on your health and your ability to adapt to the environment that you live in. So it's not only your microbiome, but it's the food that you feed your microbiome. If you're in a cooler climate and these certain types of foods grow, you're in that climate, the food's in that climate, and the cleaner you can eat that food, the smaller the farm, the less chemical input, the healthier the soil that it's grown in. It will have a higher nutrient value, and it will be less chemicalized. So it's it seems like you could get a squash from the store, or you could get a squash from your neighbor down the street at their farm, and there's a huge difference between those two things. It's not the same squash. So that's something that I've been really trying to focus on in with my animals as well, is getting them eating what's local and seasonal. And I have found that that has bolstered their health, allowed them to be much more resilient compared to especially other horses that my horses are living with. They seem to be quite doing very well.
Hmm.
So, um, and it's still a project, but I know there's a lot of farmers out there that are switching over to a more regenerative farm process, um, regenerating the soil, regenerating the landscape, and growing food in a way that is not in rows, not monocultured, and they're getting rid of their chemicals. So they're allowing the soil to come back, have all those good microbes, have all the good worms, and then the companion planting actually helps the plants be healthier, rotational planting, all of these types of things. And for my generation, I think there's lots of people going to homesteading and all these soil regen projects, lots of small farm projects, especially around BC where we live. And the benefits are proven by science, but this is the oldest way of taking care of yourself that's ever since agriculture began, which I actually don't know, but it's like thousands and thousands of years old practice. So yeah, I think that before you start thinking about supplements and therapies and things like that, we do have an emphasis on the diet is important, but it's not just going to the grocery store and getting just fruits and veggies. It's a little bit more than that.
Got it. And that's a good place to start if that's where you, but definitely explore your local farmers. There are so many, probably in every area of the world, there are local farmers growing local things
Yeah.
seasonally. And if you can access those, there are ways. Community shared agriculture boxes, or even just a conversation. You just never know. There might be some bartering you could do.
Yeah.
What thought?
Yes.
So, and I know that there's a tendency these days to, well, if I can't get it from my food, I'll just take a supplement. And you've referred to that a couple of times. Let's just briefly talk about the holistic industry, or just the supplement industry itself. What are the implications of that? Why is that not necessarily sufficient, even if it's all scientifically balanced
Yeah.
and the cells can absorb it? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I guess food, like I'm a homeopath, so my brain thinks in a very holistic is a very overused term at this point, but considering the whole of a being or a diet or an environment, it's a dynamic process. So when we have a supplement that's kind of inert in a bottle, in a powdered form, been through a laboratory, it's been cleaned, it's been sterilized, it's been capsulized, it's been this, that, and the other. And then there's a lot of singular things, like we can take singular amino acids, we can take singular vitamins, singular minerals. And I hear that a lot when I'm, even when I'm just talking to other people, they're like, "Oh, I'm really stressed, so I'm taking vitamin B, B12." And I'm like, "Oh, well, you know, taking the whole complex is actually probably more useful than just taking the B12, which is the isolated, just one part of your vitamin B complex." And then with amino acids, same thing. We have people taking lysine, and we have people taking NAC, which is N-acetylcysteine. We have and they'll take them for these specific things that they've been scientifically proven to help with. And the overall theme that I understand is that if that is actually working for you, and you do notice a difference when you take magnesium or you take whatever, you have a deficiency. And if you feel that much better with, magnesium on board, you have to kind of reverse engineer that and understand, like, okay, here are all of the symptoms and the side effects of magnesium deficiency. What else can I do, especially with that one? How can I reduce my stress and make my nervous system healthier? And what can I eat in my diet, et cetera, et cetera. So when you're taking that magnesium, you're not just taking magnesium and then calling it a day and going to your stressful job and going to commute 3 hours a day and do all these other, and then drive through at McDonald's at the end. It doesn't really for the long term, if you're trying to, increase your longevity and your quality of life, there is no magic pill for that. So
Right.
that's, and all the minerals, all the amino acids, all of the vitamins, they all work together. So there's always a ratio. So, for example, calcium and phosphorus, they need to be in your body in a certain ratio, or you're going to feel really crappy. And then on top of that, magnesium, copper, selenium, zinc, all of these, potassium and sodium, we have these very specific parameters that they're supposed to be mostly in so that we can maintain our health and our homeostasis. So when we are deficient in something for a really long time, it's not just that we're not probably not getting it from our food, which we probably aren't, but it's also, there are certain illnesses, certain stress states that can actually deplete certain minerals and vitamins from our bodies because we're under chronic stress of some sort. So we do have to kind of look a little deeper than just taking something out of a bottle, taking it.
Got it. Yeah. So I hear you. And it's about body, mind, spirit. Like it's all connected, or the four sacred bodies: emotional, mental, physical, spiritual. However, there are many different modalities that you could talk about that subject in.
Exactly.
But it isn't just taking a pill. If a supplement helps you, great, do that. But it's not just, like you said earlier, it's not a magic pill. We have
Yeah.
to look at our whole beings, the holistic. I know it's been overused, but it's still a good word. A holistic view of where we are with the soil, with the seasonal eating, with the local farmers, with our supplement needs, with whatever the picture is that's going on. And I know that you've talked about, sometimes we get all these marketing emails too. I know
I have so many.
my mom and I talk about this, and it's, oh, you're deficient in this, or this is happening and there's so much cancer. And true. But then
Yeah.
if it's always about selling the next supplement,
Mhm.
can you just briefly give us an overarching of what's happening in the wellness industry in terms of pills and potions?
Yeah, it's overwhelming. And I that's what I find with my clients is they're very overwhelmed. There's so much that it's almost impossible to choose. You end up just throwing your money at something because you're like, "Oh, that sounds like me. Okay, I'm gonna try it." And then nothing happens. And then, it can become very expensive, very frustrating, very stressful. And so what I have started to do with my clients is to try and help them. I find a lot of my clients have become very health anxious
Mm.
because they have so many options, and they honestly are totally overwhelmed. And then it makes it very hard to make a decision about what you should, like, how to discern, like, there's all these millions of things. What is actually going to help me?
Mm.
And that's where having a good practitioner is really important. Well, probably almost more important now than before, because there wasn't this overload before. Um, so when we are dealing with a certain pathology, or you want to have a person who understands that pathology from a larger viewpoint. So if you go the conventional route, you'll go to a specialist. A lot of times and if you have some kind of chronic inflammation, you go to the specialist, but then unfortunately you end up usually on steroids. Doesn't really matter which specialist you go to. A lot of the time it's a steroid trial to see if they can get the inflammation down. And there are certain pathologies that are connected to certain stress states, certain diets, certain genetics, certain species. So, like for dogs, cats, and horses, I know the pathologies that most affect cats, and I also have the foresight from the wild animals that they don't have these problems. So, where is it in that shift from wild to domestic that we are seeing these pathologies? And that's where my mind is always going. I'm like, okay, what primal or genetic or ancestral need is not being met right now, and what can we do to help? And with people, obviously we have so much isolation, so much data coming at us all the time, which is how we end up getting into buying a supplement even, right? It's just like all the time. So we have a lot of overload, and our nervous systems are always on overdrive. So, doing these things like meditations and things to kind of ground ourselves down so that we can make good decisions when we're, being bombarded with all of this stuff. Because you do have to get more confident about, okay, what is it that I should actually start with? Because I cannot go all of these places, but where do I start? And for me, the soil has become a major focus.
Mm.
So if, as far as like where I walk, what I eat, where I take my animals for an adventure, where I house them, where I house myself, making some huge changes to help myself to be more comfortable, like have more space, because I'm an outside person, and I think we kind of all are, but I'm really an outside person. So when I have not enough space, for me, that's a huge stressor, and it becomes very chronic for me. And I have certain physical problems that only come up when I'm in that state, and I'm very aware of how, like, I'm like, oh, this is happening. Oh yes, okay. So, and then it is a lot of times it is actually more about stress management than anything else.
I
It's
totally get.
great.
Yes, I got it. And I love how your animals and your work with animals and the animals that you have encountered over the decades have informed you about A, yourself, and B, the human experience, and also as a mirror or a lens through which to look at so many things going wrong in
Yeah.
this world. I get that. Now, as we come to close to the end of this fascinating discussion, The economic state of the world today, we're being required to do things differently. Money is different. The prices of things have skyrocketed, everything, including food.
Yeah.
It's hard to, some people, it's hard to find a job. And how do you buy a house? That was the big thing back decades ago. Many of the young people now can't.
Yeah.
So, how has the economic state of the world changed things from your perspective? And what advice would you give to people?
Well, I am a millennial. Apparently, I called an elder millennial because I'm a 1982, which was just on the cusp. So our generation is interesting because we went from analog to digital. We're the only generation that got both. So we have very unique brains. We have very unique ways of interacting with time and space. We have very interesting ways of interacting with money because we have weird time perceptions because of this analog to digital. Everything was slower and it just went. So, and same with the financial, our financial situation. We came into the workforce at a very specific time, where, it was kind of getting unaffordable. And then it became so unaffordable that we just couldn't keep up. So for me, my goal has not really been to put all my eggs into a house basket or anything like that because I have so much that I want to do in the world. And if I was just focused on that, then I wouldn't get any of that done. So I have put my, eggs in a few different baskets to try and figure out what it is that is the most important to me. And I feel like a lot of people in my age range are, because our generation is I guess they're kind of taking over at this point, right? Like they're the ones in the driver's seat at this point. We've got some older generations still in power, but we're coming up. So our priorities are totally different. And I think that's where my priorities stem from, is that I don't want this life that to me seems very stressful because the amount of cost is so much different for me than it was for my parents per se. So, and then for younger generations, it's the same thing. Um, we have a lot of attention problems in the younger generations because of this technology, and so we it's a changing landscape for so many reasons because everything's so expensive. There's so many ways to advertise to your face. And um everyone has very low attention spans. So we're all kind of in this, like, unless you're really aware that that process is happening, you get kind of stuck in it. So I live very cheaply. My animals are the expense that I have. They are part of my business, and they're part of my research. And they allow me to have the lifestyle to be outside, to be growing things, to be growing food, to be foraging, to be in the environment and all of that kind of stuff. That's the only way that I can create that affordability for that lifestyle, which is very sad because it shouldn't cost um you know a fortune to have a day off to go and have a nature day, right? Like you shouldn't have to take into consideration that you got to go to work and sit in an office for 8 hours and sit in your car because you can't afford to go on a nature walk today because you got to go to work, right? So we've got ourselves in this very difficult place now because I think our priorities just have to change. In we My favorite teacher of all time, my favorite person I've never met is Caroline Mace, and she calls us all stuffologists. And she's like, we're all a bunch of stuffologists, and we need to stop wanting that to be our life, right? Like that is not really what life is, and we didn't come here to work a job and buy a bunch of stuff and then go away, right? So I think because everything's so expensive, it's easier to let that go because it's so hard to maintain it. So, and to do that, I feel like that's been one of the biggest de-stressors for me is to just I don't need to have all this stuff. I don't need to have what that person has, right? Like I need this is what I need. And what are my personal needs? What makes me fulfilled in my life, right? So,
Got it.
yeah.
Thank you for that. And I love Carolyn Mace's The Stuffologist.
I
And
love
relating back to the title of this talk and is the microbiome. And if we're just focused on all of this busyness and this pressure and this expense and the stress of what's happening in the world today, I mean, there's always been stress. So, and we do live in a safe time. Generally in the Western world, things are safer,
yeah.
but everything is very expensive. So how do we navigate this field? And I know, just to wrap up, Sarah, one of the things, the new exciting project, you're moving to a farm on Vancouver Island. Tell us a tiny bit about that project so people can know about it and then perhaps watch you as this unfolds.
Yeah, so I'm moving. I'm moving in 15 days or 14 days, and I found this farm through a beautiful organization called Young Agrarians, which is a land matching service. It's a nonprofit. They're amazing. You should go and check them out and support them if you can. They're very supportive of creating new farm projects, supporting new farmers, and matching landowners with farmers who want to do regenerative farming projects. So I've been looking and looking and looking for a very long time, years, for the right partner. And I finally found that person, and the facilities there are amazing. We're able to do local sales of food and herbs, and also we'll eventually be going on to freeze drying uh, foods and herbs and making them available for a larger, maybe more national audience. So it's going to be a bit of an experimentation year this year, growing and planting and starting seeds and really getting to the science of soil and starting to regenerate a small section of this farm so that we can see how the microbiome looks in that soil from the beginning of the project to the year 1, year 2, year 3, and then the food that comes out of that. Eventually some of that the nutritional content will be tested, and we'll be able to offer that to the public, which is
Yay!
great.
I want some of that for sure. And where is
Yeah,
the farm
it's
located?
in the Comox Valley in
Yeah.
Courtenay, BC, on Vancouver Island.
Fantastic. Sarah, what a great conversation. What would you like to leave people with today?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's the year of the horse, 2026, and I am wishing for everyone that I feel like everyone's had it's been a very changeable few years, and I think everyone would probably agree with that. Everyone I talk to, it tends to
Tumultuous for
be
sure. Yes.
lots of ups and downs, and I'm really hoping for a bit more ease and flow and action this year so that everything feels more, just a little easier for everybody.
Oh, that's a great wish to leave people with. I
Yeah.
love it. Thank you so much for being here. And if you're watching today, just know we do this podcast and all the services that Mind Myself provides because you matter. Thank you. And thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Esther.